But what you often see happening, and I think this is kind of one of the things that the slow movement is about reminding us, is that that's not the most sensible or humane way to think about death or time. When people have a really serious breakdown, and I was in Spain last week giving a talk, and I met a lot of people. It was a talk to people who had been involved in serious health problems and so on. And they all said to me without fail, and this I've encountered everywhere, they say, when you have a near-death experience, you come back, you survive it, you stare into the abyss, you return to normal life, and you have a choice. You can choose speed to try and cram as much as you can into the time left, or you can choose quality. And by quality, they meant slowness. So focusing on what's really important to get the most value for your time. And it seems to me that we just have the wrong take on death, if you like. And there's a healthier, more salubrious way to think about it, and that would be that sort of slow way.
Let's take another text question. Okay, this is from Melissa Colombo is it?
Hi, Melissa.
How do you pronounce it? Mandolin, Illinois.
Mundelein,
the question
yes.
is, what's the most useful way to prioritize? Daily, weekly, written? What's the most useful way?
It's interesting that question is phrased. It's got a feel. Hello, Melissa, in Illinois. It has the feeling of that whole kind of time management culture that we've created around time, the daily, the weekly, the written, and so on. Those things are important, but I think that the most useful way to prioritize is to start with the bigger picture, is to start by taking some time to yourself to think, to reflect, to meditate on what's really important to you, in the workplace, in your family, and so on. And then once you've worked out those kind of big brushstroke priorities, then you work out on the kind of micro level, if you like, the sort of nitty-gritty of how to put that into practice. I think that will depend on each person. I mean, I found it easiest to work weekly, to think what my priorities were in a week, and then to work back from that. But I've met many other people who prefer to think in terms of a day, and to sit down and look at each day and prioritize at the beginning of the day, and cut things there. I think it really depends on each person, but I like the idea of writing things down, because so much of our existence now is electrons flying around in the ether. It's virtual, it's on a screen, it goes and it's gone. I think there's something slowing even, there's something relaxing and decelerating about picking up a pen, and I'm assuming by written, I suppose that could be on a screen, but I think there's something about the act of picking up a pen and writing on paper, the tactile experience that gives an extra depth, I think, to the search for how to use time. And I always, whenever I think about those things, I use my computer for everything else, but when I want to think about the really big questions in my life, and that includes priorities and how I want to structure my next 6 months and think about my next year, I switch off the computer, I put my iPhone to one side, and I get out a piece of paper and a big pen, and I go to it that way.
Oh, I love to hear you say that. I still have fountain pens that I like. It's kind of my favorite gift to myself and from others, because I lose them all the time. And I write my dreams down too. I found that has been really a great key to slowing down, writing down my dreams, making myself do it. I don't do it every day, but I do it a lot, and it's amazing how much I learn about what's important to me through the night travels. Next text question. This one is from Amy Hurt, who is a books editor.
Subway Meditations.
and an editor at Penguin, and someone who I now believes, as I do, that reading books is one of the ways to slow down. So here's a question. Can you give us subway meditations? So develop a slow in a fast body at rush hour.
Hi, Amy. That's the toughest one, isn't it? Is in New York, London, rush hour, everything moving at 100 miles an hour. But it is possible, and I find there are certain things that work for me and others that work for other people. One of them is reading. You know, I find that even without an iPhone or music blocking out other people, I find for me reading is an immensely slowing experience, and I find I'll sometimes even be standing in the tube, you know, the subway in London, and I'll read poetry, or I'll read Paul Auster, or I'll just read, and I find that reading is very slowing, and it creates a kind of, you can create a bubble or of armor around yourself, which kind of blocks out some of that mania and hysteria that constitutes modern rush hour. For other people, it's music. It can be, you know, it can be loud crashing music, but I'm guessing for most music it would be, you know, gentle rhythms and so on, that you block out the noise and you tune into a different tempo, a different kind of level and a different dimension. So I suppose music is another one. I went to Tokyo when I was researching the book, and of course Tokyo is famous for having a real anthill of a rush hour, and it's true. I mean, people are being wedged onto trains, and they are running to catch a train, even though the next one will be there within 2 minutes. It's all about speed, but it's amazing when you get on the trains how zen so many people there are. They almost zone out into a kind of meditative state, and then just suddenly wake up 30 seconds before their stop. And I spoke to some of these people, and they say they just go into a kind of almost a trance-like state. I mean, that might not be the best thing on the New York subway, where you might lose your wallet or your iPhone if you're not paying close attention. But you know, you choose your moments. Maybe you're on a bus, or you stop on the way and do that. So I think, I mean, it'd be interesting to hear what other readers, other Huffington Post people make of that, because one of the ways I think we need to move forward in this sort of slowing down thing is to share ideas. And I'm always, even now, even though I've spent a long time traveling around talking to people about this, I still learn new tips and tricks and try and put them into place in my own life. So maybe people could, in the chat room, could throw in some of their own ideas about how they inoculate themselves against the virus of hurry and speed during rush hour.
Well, you mentioned poetry, and I really feel the same way, that somehow there is something about reading poetry more than reading anything else that slows me down. So do you have any particular poets or any particular poems that have that effect on you that you would recommend?
I've been reading a lot of, I like Yeats, a lot of Keats recently. I find that almost any poetry works because it's so boiled down and distilled. So much of what we read now is disposable, and you can skim it, you can skim read it. But good poetry, real poetry, demands your full attention. And anything that engages your full attention slows you down. It slows you down physically, it slows you down intellectually, and I think you could argue that it even slows you down spiritually. So I find that even reading difficult modern poetry can be a slowing experience too. It may not be as pleasurable as reading Keats or Yeats or some of the great poets from the past, but it does still have that same effect. And one of the reasons is this concentration of thought and attention to detail in the writing, in the language, but also the fact that poetry introduces different rhythms and tempos that knock us off balance and force us to think again about how quickly we're reading, how swiftly we're moving through the sentence. And it almost engages the body. It becomes a kind of physical dance as you try and work out how to navigate this piece of writing. So I think poetry is wonderful for that. And my children, my son is nearly 11 and my daughter is 8, do poetry, do a lot of poetry at school, and it's wonderful to see them writing it at home and taking the amount of care they take just to polish and to get one sentence, 2 sentences to fit together perfectly, or the way they see it perfectly, is hugely inspiring and reassuring as well, because we're told, of course, this is the we generation. All they want to know is where the next iPhone app is coming from. But I think that's not true. I think that there's something about poetry, but also reading in general, books in general, that has a timeless appeal to the human animal. It's part of a rich human life is reading, and reading books. I mean traditional books, not e-books.